Nebraska's corn harvest is 5 points ahead of the 5-year average, with 71% complete as of the latest crop progress report. However, the latest state report noted high moisture levels have slowed the advancement. That, coupled with farmers possibly holding on to grain longer than usual, means drying and storage will be important factors in maintaining quality. Earlier this week, we spoke with Purdue University Extension engineer Klein Ileleji about how you can ensure your grain stays in the best possible quality through winter and into 2014.
One of the things you have to note is that grain is a biological material, and so it's prone to deterioration based on the initial quality you put in your bin. So the importance of bringing in grain with good quality is that since you're not going to get your grain to improve in quality during storage, it can only go downhill. You want to bring grain with good quality to begin with.
What we're hearing in Nebraska, Klein, is that a lot of the corn is not drying down in the field, and farmers, especially in irrigated situations, are having to take it out at maybe 20%, maybe a little bit higher moisture. If they're going to store that for a decent amount of time, where do they need to dry that down to maintain optimum quality?
Once you get late in the season, when the weather changes, we have more wetter weather, you have precipitation, high relative humidities, you don't have good quality air to affect dry down. And so what we advise is that at this time, farmers have no option but to bring it into the bin. And the importance of bringing it in early is at least you save yourself from the risk of any bad weather that could take place at this time. Typically, you want to dry your grain as low as 15% or 14.5, depending on how long you're going to carry it into next year. We have a good crop this year. I've heard of a talk that we could see farmers storing into the summer. And so if you want to keep your grain for that long, you want to dry your grain as low as 15% at least.
Now, how do you make sure that you don't over dry it? Because obviously, the drier you go, the more dollars you might be shedding off there. So how do you make sure that you don't go below that 14.5 to 15 level?
What you want to do is typically, depending on the drying system, because you have a lot of different drying systems out there. Depending on the drying systems, you want to dry your grain to at least in a high temperature dryer to at least 16%, and then you can probably take the last 1% points off using aeration, or sometimes you could dry it as high as 17% and take the last 2 points with aeration. But one thing I want to note here is that at this time of the season, when the weather is not as good in terms of the relative humidity is high, aeration will not work as well. We're getting to the point where we at the later stage when aeration will work effectively, so until the spring.
What temperature would you like that to be at now? And as you go through winter, how do you need to monitor to make sure it stays around that safe level?
Very good. One of the importance of temperature is that temperature actually is one of the factors that determines the rate at which grain will deteriorate, or the rate at which fungi, which deteriorates grain, will grow. The lower the temperature, the better or the longer that grain will store. So you want to keep your grain for as low as 40 degrees Fahrenheit and below. You want to keep that grain as cool as possible. And since we stay in a temperate climate, as long as we have good low air temperatures and the relative humidity is not high, we don't have a rain, you can pretty much cool that grain with aeration to as low as 40 or below. And you want to maintain that grain temperature as low as possible through the winter and even into the spring to the summer. Cooling below 40 degrees Fahrenheit is the best way to retard deterioration. and you want to cool it as fast as you can.
As you look at checking on those bins during the winter, you say you might be able to get away with it only checking once a month, but you also write that you should maybe look at the trend when you take the temperature, not the absolute temperature. Why is that?
What you want to do is not to check and just acquire just the temperature at the point at which you check your grain. You want to keep tabs. Make sure you record those temperatures to see the trend, because it's the trend in temperatures that give you an idea if the grain is deteriorating or it's maintaining its condition. So an instantaneous temperature data point will not give you a good idea of what's going on. But over time, if you see the trends in temperatures going high, then that's an indication you're having some deterioration going on. If your trends remain the same, then that's an indication that probably nothing is going on.